All right, so welcome everybody. So, apologies for the link problem. It looks like you found you found us anyway, and we have an exciting group of speakers about exhibitions today. And as you've heard often repeatedly from me about the Newbery, that's one of the most, I think it's one of the most important things we can do with pop-up books is have people see as many of them at once as possible, but also figure out creative ways that we can show the movement of the books. So it's not just putting it in the case so nobody can touch it. It's figuring out ways to image them, to take videos, have facsimiles, and just really push at the ways that people can enjoy these objects. Still getting a few more people in. Yeah. Oh yes. As today, I'm Suzanne Schmidt. Yeah. The current director of the Movable Book Society and also curator of the Newbery Library. And Marianne Petit is behind the scenes, helping direct things very nobly from an art fair. I think we're going to have to start, and we might have to ask everyone to mute soon so we can have our presenters, get started. But I'm glad that we continue to have a good conversation throughout the hour. So wonderful. All right, I'm going to mute everybody. And yeah, so let's get started with the University of Pennsylvania. Dot Porter, who is the curator of all sorts of amazing manuscripts and making them accessible digitally. This is one of the best collections to really get into the nitty-gritty of volvels and hands-on things going back hundreds of years. And Ellen Rubin and I both had the pleasure of visiting this exhibition that's currently on at the University of Pennsylvania. And I would love to let you take it away, Dot.
Great, thank you so much. So I'll, of course, start by sharing my PowerPoint. And I'm going to say up front, I also have a video of a walkthrough of the whole exhibit, which I'll play in the second half of my little presentation. So if you are sensitive to movement, if you get motion sickness, I don't know, it might affect people, but if it affects a lot of people, I also have a slideshow that has screenshots of points in the video, which is kind of less interesting because it doesn't have the movement, which of course the exhibit is all about the movement, but I also don't want to make anybody sick. So we'll get there and we'll see how it goes. So thank you, Suzanne, for inviting me. My name is Dot Porter. I am the curator of digital humanities in the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies, which is a research and development institute focused on manuscripts in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books and Manuscripts in the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. The SIMS is about 10 years old. It's named after Lawrence Schoenberg, who I'll say a little bit more about in my exhibit talk. And he basically gifted his collection of almost 300 manuscripts to the library. And in response, the library set up this Institute for Manuscript Studies, which focuses on both manuscript digitization and making the manuscripts available, doing different kinds of digital projects, which I don't really have a chance to talk about today, but I'm happy to talk about that later. But I'm actually going to start by saying a little bit about myself and why I wanted to do this exhibit and the context in which this exhibit happened. So because I'm the curator of digital humanities, this is primarily what I have, interact with. And I think a lot of people, when they're interacting with manuscripts these days, this is how it happens, is online, because it is kind of difficult to get to a library and see manuscripts. So if you're like, oh, I'm going to see what manuscripts this library has, if they have a digitized library, it's going to look like this. This is one of our manuscripts in our interface, which is called Calenda. And the way that most manuscripts are digitized, I'm actually curious how it happens with like movable books, which have different kinds of things. But for us, it goes to the lab. They take images, photographs of every page in a very kind of controlled environment, which I think of as sort of virtually taking the book apart. And then you put it in some kind of interface that puts it back together, kind of in a way, but it's not really the book. So the first 10 years of my career, I was in digital humanities. I worked on projects making digital editions of medieval manuscripts and a lot of other things, but I always, my background is medieval studies, so that's always how I considered myself. And it wasn't until I came to Penn 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, and discovered that in fact, manuscripts don't look like this. They look like this. So this is a little video of the same manuscript, LJS 101. This is part of a series that I do called Video Orientations. It's like 3-minute videos on YouTube. And it's basically to show people what the book, or give a better sense, I guess, of what the book really looks like. Because there's nothing like being with it and having your hands on it. But it's such a different experience. And not just seeing it as an object, but seeing it as an object that moves. Because books move, you have to move them to read them and to use them. And so that to me is a really important part of the experience. Just a little mention of a digital project that I've been working on for about as long as I've been at Penn. In addition to the movement part, the structure is part of that. And when you move a page in a book, because of the way codex manuscripts are put together, they're made of sheets that are folded and then sewn together. The leaves are attached to each other. So if you pull on one, the other one's going to move. And so we have this project that has finally resulted in the software called BC Editor, where you can model and then visualize the structure. So this is my brain. When I'm thinking about these, it's like they're complex objects that fit together, and how do they move? And I know enough about movable books to know this is very similar to like when you're doing a pop-up or you're doing, you're pulling a tab and it's moving. It's a very similar, I think, kind of idea. The big thing that I do probably that has to do with showing popular audiences how books move is Coffee with a Codex. It's every Thursday at noon Eastern time. I get on Zoom and I just do a show and tell of one of our manuscripts to really see sort of how that goes. And then they're all on YouTube. So if you're interested, you can check that out. I haven't ever done a pop-up book, but I have done books that have volvels in them. So you can probably look those up and find them. So, a couple years ago when I was sort of planning, thinking I want to do another exhibit, immediately I was like, I want to do one about the movement of books. Let's do this. That's going to be great. And I immediately ran into the same kind of problem that I have with digitized manuscripts that are put in these online interfaces. And that is that in a gallery space, we take the books and we don't take them apart and then like re-put them together in an interface, but they're still under glass. There's a single page. You can see the physicality of them, but they don't move. That was immediately, I was like, okay, so how can I make an exhibit that is about the movement of books, that respects the the sort of condition of this, because I can't, as much as I might love to, like, I can't just have an exhibit with the books out where people can turn the pages themselves. Like, that was never going to happen, and I wouldn't suggest it. But what are the things that I can do? So now I'm going to show you the little video of the walkthrough, and you can sort of see how I did this. So I'm going to switch my screen share here. So here's the video. And as I go through, so this is when you're actually at the gallery, the first thing as you come down, you're going to see the lovely sign. It's the Goldstein Family Gallery. It's on the 6th floor of of Van Pelt Library on the Penn campus. So we're going to come in, and the first thing we see is this, which basically, it's a lot of what I've already said about, like, we want to talk about the movement of books because we have to move them, and the importance of engaging physically with books. And so that, I think I held it here a little bit too long. One of the things that I'm going to do is sort of call out the people who organized or who designed it. They did a great job. Those airplanes were their idea. So the first book we see is 12th century, and it was owned by Sir Thomas Phillips. That was his signature. And I'll say more about him as we go through. So there are 5 sections. The first one is how do books move? And this is really focused on format. So different formatted books move in different ways and also interact with the text in different ways. So this is a genealogy that's in the form of a codex. And you can see here the genealogical lines. And as I go down to the bottom, the line just sort of goes off of the page, which isn't great because then you have to turn the page and find it. Now, this is a facsimile of a roll that we have in our collection. This is a 15th century roll. And here's a genealogy that in a roll. And the great thing about rolls for genealogy is that they keep going. Rolls keep going and going and going. They're not great for some kinds of texts, like if you want to find something, but they're good for genealogy. This is a small copy of a book of Esther. And here's the same text in a scroll. And the scroll would have been read during Purim. And it's the same text in that small codex book. It's a little unusual because it's clearly not used for this ritual purpose that the scroll would have been used for, would have been read in public. It's more of a personal one. So the personal format versus a format that it would have been used in groups. And so the next case here is another roll. This is a Giaz protective roll. So this would have been hung up in the house to keep bad spirits away if someone in the household was sick. This is a Book of Hours, which is a very common format of prayer book in the late Middle Ages, a codex form. And then this is a Thai accordion book. So this is made similar to a roll, which is on a large, running sheet. But instead of being rolled up, it's folded and you actually can turn the pages almost like it's, in a similar way to a codex, except that it's sideways instead of up and down. So another way to sort of organize the material and organize the text. This is just something that the exhibit designer, Brittany Merriam, put in. She has a great eye for what looks good. And so it was a great aesthetic to have on the wall. This is a palm leaf book from probably from India. And so a whole different format. You have palm leaves with a string through the middle to keep them together. And then this is a great example of a fold out. One of the limitations of a codex book is that you only have the space that's on the page. And so there's this practice of fold outs. And I love this one because it's the Danube River. And there's a great story called The Willows, a very old horror story where a guy is on a boat on the Danube. And I never really understood it. I was like, what, like a river is a river. And then I saw this and I was like, oh no, that's a really complicated river. And so this is a great one. And you have to, fold it out to see the whole thing. And we all know fold outs, that's a really common way of organizing books. So the next thing that we hit is what I call the Move Me table. And this is a really important part of the exhibit because this is where we can get to that hands-on part that we can see the books in the cases, and here's where we can actually touch things that are similar to them. I want to call out my colleagues in Education Commons and particularly the Common Press. I had a lot of collaborators on this exhibit and they both did a fantastic job. The Education Commons has a makerspace, and that's where we got the flying donkey that its wings move when you turn it. And then this book, the book Automata, is really fun. The little guys on there are taken from our 13th century Bible. They're little drolleries that you find in the margins. They're all in different places in the book, and we brought them together, and they can play. And again, when you turn the little crank, they kind of move and dance, which is fun. And then these are the model books that the Common Press made for us. So there's a roll that is based on the Guiaz roll, the protective roll. It's the same size and shape. And then the other one is the Esther scroll. It's based on that Esther scroll. It's the same, it's not quite as long, but it's the same size, and it's been folded in the same way, which is pretty neat. And then they also made us 3 different codex books. They made us an accordion book out of the same type of black paper that the Thai accordion book is made of. And the little one at the top is the palm leaf book with a string through it. So you can see how it feels to like move it through. And these are really popular. Whenever I come in and there are people here, they are playing with these. This is sort of the central part. This is on the back wall of the gallery, and it's a loop of videos that I made, you know, paging through. For the most part, these are not in the exhibit. These are other example books of the same, you know, that move in similar ways. This one's fun because it has a chain. We set up little chairs so people can sit. And I have to call out Ellen Rubin, because she sent me a video of one of the books that is in a case that we'll see in a second, so that I was able to add to the loop, which was really great because it wasn't in the loop before that. And the Jacob's Ladder, there's a Jacob's Ladder book that we'll see that my colleagues at Temple made a little video of and sent in to be included in the loop. The loop is also on YouTube, and I'll send a link at the end in the chat so you can see that. But this is great. I don't think you can hear it, but the sound is in the gallery. So in a minute, there will be a clanking noise because of the movement. So this is the really about movable books, this case here. So this is an astrolabe, or an example of an astrolabe that you can just play around with. And here's where we get to volvels. We have our 15th century astronomical volvels there. Here's Gulliver, and this is the one that Ellen sent that's in the video too. When you lift up the front page, he falls in, and then there's a big pop-up at the end as well. Here's another pop-up book that I really like. I really like that. And this is the only book, this Christmas card is the only object in the gallery that was made in Philadelphia. Everything else came from elsewhere, which will be relevant in a moment. And then the last book in this case is this one, which is a cipher manuscript. And there's a string there, and you can move it. And these are special alphabets, so they have different little characters. And if you want to send a coded letter to someone, you can select it and go on. And so this is, where do books move? So not only do books move as physical objects, but they also move through time and space. And one of the great collectors of manuscripts in the late 19th century was Sir Thomas Phillips, who was an English collector. And he was, I think, probably not mentally well. He had a lot of money, and at one point he had over 60,000 manuscripts and something like 90,000 printed books. He had a lot of them. And he put his name in them. And then after he died, they got sold out. So, and then they got, purchased again. And so Penn has something like over 200 manuscripts from his collection. And so these are examples of his signature in all the books. And then, of course, I have to call out the Schoenbergs, who we own a large number of manuscripts from their collection, and they did a lot of collecting. Every label in the gallery has information about where the manuscripts came from and how they came, not only the manuscripts, but all of the objects, how we got them. And so that's an important part of the movement, is acknowledging that things came from other places, and it can kind of be complicated about how they came to us. And then the central object in this place gets its own case. This is a 15th century liturgical book that was made in Cologne and was used in the Cologne Cathedral until the end of the 18th century, which is incredible. And so it shows within it, you can see patches and changes that people made. There's wax strippings on there. And this is a book that didn't move for a very long time, which I think is as interesting as books that did move. It was hard for me to get a good angle to see it because it's so big and the case is kind of in the way. But I did my best. And then the next case is over here. And this is moving in fragments. And so as books, as objects move through time, things happen to them. And a lot of times, you know, they fall apart or people destroy them. And so a lot of things survive in fragments. Here's a paste down in a printed book that's a manuscript page. This was a manuscript page that was used as a binding wrapper. You can see because of the way the corners are cut. This is a pretty little page that was probably cut out of a book of hours to be decorative, to be hung on a wall. And these are some of my favorites. These are both from the Schoenberg collection. These are two fragments from the same original book. It's a mathematical Arabic text. And the book, the parent book at some point was taken apart and bits of it were sold separately. And Larry Schoenberg bought the larger piece. And then years later, he found the smaller piece for sale and he bought it and brought it together. And this is really neat because it's very hard to reconstruct books physically, and to have two sections of the same original book is pretty neat. And I was glad to include it here. So there's one more case, last but certainly not least, and that is artists' books. Modern artists' books. Everything else in the room, aside from the movable books, you know, their movement is just kind of part of what they are. It wasn't really thoughtful, and even the Volvel, like, that served a purpose. This is artists who are thinking about, like, what is a book anyway, and what are the different things that we can do, and how can I push on that? And so these are some examples from our collections that I just really liked. This one is particularly interesting because it is an accordion book. And if you look across, you can see the other accordion book. And so this is like the formats speaking to each other over a long period of time. And there's a codex, but it has these other things attached to it. And that's just great. So this is the exhibit. And if we turn around, we just get one final look at the room. And so this is that's it. And I will go back to my slides because I think I have, let's see, one more slide. What do I have? There we go. So this is my thank you. And I'll put the links in the chat if you want to know more about the exhibit. The video loop from the back of the hall is on YouTube, and you can watch it there. There was a lovely write-up in Penn today that you can read if you would like. And there's another exhibit happening at the same time in the library, which was books made by the Delaware Valley chapter of the Guild of Bookworkers. If you're in the Philadelphia area and you want to come and see my exhibit, I also encourage you to see Valeria's exhibit because it's great. So that's everything for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dot. We had a couple of questions in the chat. I think a lot of our members are going to be digging into some of those links. So Emily Martin is in the audience now. So one of you. Is Maria? I don't know if she's here. I didn't notice her coming, but yeah. So that I think you managed to get two Movable Book Society artists in the same case.
That wasn't on purpose, but I'm glad. They were great. They're great books. I was loved including them.
Yeah, so there was a question early on about is there text on the scrolls, I think. Do the roles have words? Someone asked. I guess it depends on which.
Yes. Yeah, all the roles that are in the that are featured here have words on them. I mean the Esther scroll, obviously, the one that's copied on the wall has text too.
So
And
the
Vicky
question
has
was,
one.
yeah, the question popped up when you were at the space in the exhibit that people could handle, and they couldn't
Okay.
tell if the scrolls had words on them or not.
Yeah, so those scrolls don't have words. And the codex books have words only on the first page. So if I open them up, they are blank inside.
Okay, so Jim Fraser asks, the book with the mechanical moving parts, how are they stored when the book is closed?
Oh, it is a solid piece of wood, so it doesn't close. It sits, it just looks like a book. It looks like an open book. The movable parts are all kind of inside. So there's no way to close it. Although it would be cool if you could, but no.
Yeah. Okay, Kitty Smith says, do you have any plans if someone breaks or does damage to the facsimiles that can be handled in the exhibit? I also should add to that, did you learn anything from my kids mishandling the facsimiles when we visited? I think they dropped at least one of them all the way to the floor because the accordion opened up.
Yeah. So that is funny. When Suzanne came with her kids, one of them, the first thing he did is he took the accordion book and pulled it like this, and it went and opened up. And I was like, I had no idea. No, everybody does that to the accordion book. That is like the first thing they
You
want
were
to do
warned,
is like
to be
pull
fair.
it open. So that's what I've learned, is that everybody wants to do that. I think if somebody did damage to them, we would fix them. But I've been kind of surprised that there hasn't been, like, there's no ripping, like the paper isn't getting ripped, and it's not. The only issue that we had is somebody pulled the facsimile of the roll. Somebody pulled it off the wall. It's sticky. It's like a giant sticker, and they actually pulled it off, and then it was found on the ground, kind of crumpled up. I think they wanted to take it home and didn't realize it was sticky. But it was replaced. This was filmed after that happened. So that's the only thing that happened. But I mean, if they damaged it, we would fix them, and we wouldn't take them away. I wouldn't take them away.
All right, well, thank you, Dot. I think we're going to move on to Iowa. Well, we can have more questions later if more come up. This was a wonderful walkthrough and really a lovely exhibition. So I'm going to just say that. So we're going to have Giselle Simon, who's the conservator for the Center for Book Art, do a whole lot of amazing work there, and then her co-curator on the exhibition. They're going to talk about Damien Ihrig, the curator of the John Martin Rare Book Room at the Library for Health and Sciences. So we're going to hear about these objects in a couple of different exciting ways. So yeah, take it away, Giselle.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for having us. I'm here with my co-curator, Damien, and we're just missing one of our other curator, Beth Yale, who is faculty in the Department of History here at the University of Iowa, and also faculty for material analysis at the University of Iowa Center for the Book. And I'm the conservator at the main libraries, but I also do some adjunct teaching at the Center for the Book. So it's great to be able to work with Beth and Damien for sure. One of my bigger clients, so to speak, as the conservator at the libraries here. But really quickly, we just wanted to show you a few things. Again, this exhibit that we're going to do next fall is kind of still in the beginning stages, although I think we're narrowing down a final objects list and having fun looking at the collections. So that's really terrific. Great fun to do with Damien and Beth. And we have a working title called Movable Book in Art, Science, and Education. So that is kind of where we we're looking at. So I wanted to say the inspiration really for me was the John Martin Rare Book Room. Damien's going to talk about that. And the core of the items that we're going to show in our exhibit come from that collection, and it's very exciting. So we're going to focus on one item that we know is going to be in this show. And Damien's going to introduce that, and then I'm going to show you actually some pages from that book and try to move some flaps around in my document camera. So hopefully you will enjoy that. And without further ado, I'm going to toss it over to Damien so he can talk about the John Martin Rare Book Room. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Giselle. And thanks, everybody, and thanks for the invitation. I'm just going to share my screen really quick here. Okay, great. So yeah, so I'm just going to give a brief intro to the John Martin Room. Probably a pretty common origin story. We are named after Dr. John Martin. We're housed at the Hardin Library for the Health Sciences. So the Hardin Library serves the three-part mission of health sciences on campus here. So we support the college's departments, the hospital on campus with their research, education, and clinical missions. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. So we're very excited about that. We've been celebrating all year. There have been many cupcakes. Here we have a shot of the brand new space that we have. We're very excited about this. This is a newly renovated reading room. Before, we didn't really have a dedicated reading room space. The books and the reading room were all in one space, but now everything is sort of separate. So we have a spot where folks can interact with the materials, and the books are kept in secure storage then. We're named after Dr. John Martin. He was a physician, neurosurgeon, philanthropist, self-diagnosed bibliomaniac. Like many mid-century collectors, he post-war started collecting, got addicted, couldn't stop, and eventually he had a fairly substantial collection. Retired about 1962, moved to Iowa to be closer to family, and started looking for a place for his collection to be once he was gone. And eventually he found his way to the University of Iowa, and we were just in the planning stages for this library. And so it was a great collaboration. He was able to donate his collection here. And he also gave a small endowment, so curators like myself could keep collecting. And the library again opened 1974, but he didn't die until 1996. And again, he was addicted to collecting, so he was collecting. The curators were collecting. By the time he died, the collection was about 3,000 or so printed books. Now we have about 7,000 volumes. And again, Dr. Martin was only interested in printed books, although we do sneak in manuscript materials through covers and waste and bindings and things like that. But we've got about 40 incunabula. Our oldest books are from 1470. A couple books by the same author. One book on masturbation, and another book on heart disease. Strengths, as you might imagine. A lot of anatomy books, a lot of early medical texts. We're just trying to figure out what all the parts were and where they go and how they work together. But we also have many medicinal plant books from herbal, from Renaissance herbals up through medical botany books, a lot of midwifery, OB-GYN books, nursing, dentistry, surgery. I mean, anything, we've probably got it. And with regards to flat books that we have a number of anatomical flat books. This is really where we don't really have Movelles or something like that in the collection. It's really about physicians and surgeons trying to understand the three-dimensionality of anatomy. So the layers of organs and tissues and the skeletal structure. And this is probably the most famous one. This is from 1619, Johann Remmelin's flat book, where it really was the first systematic attempt to create a true anatomical flat book. There were definitely anatomical flaps before this point. George Bartich's book on ophthalmology is a famous example where he was trying to show three-dimensionality of both the neurological structure in the brain, but also the structure of the eye. But here Remelin was really trying to create a complete three-dimensional anatomy. So he has a male model and a female model, and like Giselle said, she's going to talk a little bit more about a later edition. But the idea was you would just have these flaps that were either glued down or they were set loose within the cavity, just to give you a sense of the three-dimensionality and the layering of all those things. But I'm very excited because I recently discovered a new one that it wasn't on our list of flat books. And this is a great example of the fact that these flaps were still being used up through the early 20th century to provide that three-dimensionality. So here we have a book on female anatomy from the Dutch author Alida Jacobs. And this was something I discovered at the back of the book. I'm actually profiling this book for something else, so that's why I created this GIF that we're going to see. But it's got these really lovely full color flaps that go through and show you each of the layers and the structures there. And you can also see Giselle, the covers off this one. But that's just a quick intro to the room, the kinds of material that you're going to find here. But the anatomy books, the flap anatomy books were an important way to try and communicate three-dimensionality. Now we have things like we have something called an anatomage table here, which is actually a digital version of these flat books. So we have the 16th century version in this room, and then we've got the 21st century version down on our third floor where students can access actual three-dimensional scans of cadavers. So that's a little bit about us. I'd be happy to answer any questions when we're done here.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks, Damien. So I'm going to show you a few pages from that Remelin. And let's see if I can share my screen. Can everyone see that? Okay, I think so. A few things about conservation too. One of our this actually the conservation work done on this particular Remelin, this is 1661, was done by one of our really terrific advanced conservation interns, Katarina Stiller. Now she's at Northwestern. Maybe some of you in Chicago will get to see her and say hello. But she did a fantastic job and also did some more GIFs that I'm going to show you right at the end of this. But I'll point out some of the things as we go. This is, and actually Suzanne has seen this. Suzanne thankfully came to visit us and has seen this particular copy. So she might be able to add some more information about this one, as well as Damien when we're done, if you have questions about the actual printed book itself. But here we have the Remelin still in its blue printer's waste wrappers, which is really, really amazing. So it hasn't been bound by a binder. But you can see it's in the wrappers. I'm going to open it up now. It is also quite large. Damien, maybe you could see from Damien's slide, but this one is about 18 inches by 13. So it's a little bit tall. And there's the title page. So you can see here, 1661. I'm going to go straight to the flaps. And I've got these little pieces of mylar that cover the flaps. So when the pages are turned, the flaps don't get bent back. But Katarina did a lot of work on this particular one. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Do a little focusing for you. And then get in position here so we can see this. So all these flaps here are quite extensive, and I'm just going to pull this one over and pull this one up. Oops, I missed one there. So here, I'm going to use my little bamboo folders to help me here. But you can see the extensive nature of all these flaps. It just keeps going and going. Here we've got this tiny little flap here. And then even this small little flap here. I wish I could tell you more about the anatomy part of this, but I here we see another little flap. So these are the kinds of things that Damien and I are going to have to talk about in terms of how do we show just the enormity of all the different flaps here. I mean, it just, again, keeps going and going. Here, I love this. You can see the complexity, actually. I need to pull that back. But we can see the complexity of the flaps even under here. A small flap attached right here. And then that's a flap on a flap, basically. So if we pull that back, can you see all the layers here? All the cutouts. And then even under here, another flap. Quite a few extensive vanity flaps. And in fact, in this one, they have a couple. I'm just going to put this back down. Vanity flap, and then another one, just in case you needed that vanity, the extra vanity flap. I want to show you another little flap here. I'm going to push this towards me, and I'm going to just zoom in a little bit further. Maybe just a little bit if it'll go. Okay. And now here we can see the heart. And then even what's so amazing to me and what is so inspirational is underneath this flap is another printed piece here. And those of you who know Suzanne's book, you know that she talks a lot about how these printed papers were done and how all these different pieces were cut out. This is just amazing to me that underneath this tiny little flap, and of course you can see all the documentation of all the bits are of course printed on the pages beside us. Here, in fact, I believe this is the tongue. And if we push this back, even here, can everyone see the little blood vessels underneath the tongue? I mean, it's really quite stunning. So, if we look back over here, we can see that how fragile all of this business was. And so Katerina actually did humidification, especially on this piece here, of all the different layers, because these flaps had been folded back and suffered a little bit of damage. This extra little vanity flap here is actually of a different paper. So we know it was added later. It's got a slight discoloration, which is hard to see on the video here. But we know it was added later and is quite bent and crushed. And so Katerina actually did mending here to reinforce these hinges at this point. And a lot of good humidification and sometimes lining these little flaps so that they have a lot of stability. I'm just going to move on to one more area, or actually I'll just show you two. We can see that we'll zoom out a little bit so you can see the man, the male, and he's got his mylar covering here. But I do want to show you the female. I can always come back if we have more time, but I want to be cognizant of that. Okay, and so here is the female. I'm just going to take the mylar off. And then we'll zoom in. Focus. There. So this is the part of the Remelin that was like the big inspiration for me. And I was excited when Suzanne got to see this part of it. Of course, we have our vanity flap, most important. And I'm just going to put a little weight on that to hold that into place. But that has been mended underneath here. It's hard to see the mending because Katerina did such a great job of it. There's another little vanity flap here that will just hold open. And as we start to embark, so to speak, in this journey, put these flaps over, we start to see the layers. So it just, again, printed layer here underneath that flap. And we'll turn this one over to reveal more. Again, I wish I could tell you, I wish I was a doctor and could tell you more about this. And here's the one that I just love so much. I think this is the kidney, and it has a little flap here. See if I can get my spatula out of the way. And then this piece is actually inserted here in a little slit on this side of the flap, and then inserted here and pasted down. Pretty incredible. Now I'll get my tweezers out for you, because this part, now we can see even these pieces were movable and coming out, all the documentation. I believe this is the stomach, right, Suzanne? I'm not sure. I'll put the stomach over here. But it just was amazing to me that all these bits and pieces were still here, that we had all of them. I just love that. Here we have more organs. And in fact, this one, pardon my fingers, is connected here with another little flap. And if we flip it over, so this was not just, I mean, this was the reference material here in 1661. Then, if we look at the lungs, these flaps open. And again, pardon my fingers, it's easier to hold that here. And then inside, the blood vessels of the lungs flapped, has another flap on it. And then inside the lung. So, pretty amazing. If we open up the sternum here, we see more information up above, and then the rest of the lungs. And I'm sorry, I guess this is really the skeleton under here. So, let's put these things back. And you can see that this, how do we manage this kind of thing in the reading room? Well, Damien can talk a little bit about how we had a graduate student actually do some reproduction of all these little bits and pieces on handmade paper. And then she made a facsimile of each of the large foldouts. So we have those pieces in the reading room so that someone can really handle those and not have to go through each bit here. Certainly we allow researchers to see those things, but it's great to have the facsimiles as an extra preservation measure. I'm just going to really quickly switch my screen, and then I'm going to, let's see, it looks like I need to, sorry about that. Can everyone see my screen? No. Let's see. Let me get back to the Zoom. There it is. Okay. So here are the animated GIFs that Katerina made for us, which is really terrific. And let's see, I'll see if I can, I'm going to just let that one go for just a minute. But you can see all the wonderful pieces. So we're going to really play with this animation and this kind of thing for a lot of the movables. And then we'll probably do, I'm going to just close this out so you can see the next one. Let's see. Sorry about that. Okay. Everyone's Zoom picture is in my view of my little note here. Let's see if I can close that up. There we go. So we're going to have fun fooling around with these animations, and I think Damien and I are also talking about the possibility of having smaller little GIFs and QR codes next to some of the cases to show little videos. I don't know, Damien, if you want to add anything to that, or any other thoughts that I might have missed.
No, I thought that was great. Yeah, I think we're just and really the Dot's presentation was really inspirational. I mean, especially
Yes,
the sort of broad interpretation of movement I thought was great. But yeah, some of the ideas of just how do you create interactivity with the materials without, you know, giving them actual hands-on with the
with the
material
eyeball.
in the exhibit space.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks to you both. This is I think the closest I've gotten to those objects without being in front of one. And everyone needs those gifts. Those are amazing.
Great.
Like,
Great.
but especially because they really get into the idea that some of these parts are intentionally attached, and some of them are removable in a way
Mhm.
that was didactic and just was able to teach people at the time. But it's just so, I don't know, operation now to us. I think people really, see the playfulness of it, and I love that you're willing to dig down on that. Okay, we've got a lot of questions, so let's
Okay.
just go through some of those for about 5 minutes. Oh yes, props for your bamboo and bone foldering.
Oh, thanks.
Yes, aha.
I'm lucky I've got a tool maker on staff.
Oh, that's handy. That's handy. What do we got? Lots and lots of praise for your collection, obviously. I think I put the Bardich in the text. So
Yes, thank you.
there's some digitized copies of that online. You don't have that, I don't think, do you?
No,
Yeah,
I think
there's
we have.
actually the eyeball that we were just looking
Yeah.
at is a direct copy from in the Remelin is a direct copy from the Bardish. So
Mhm.
there's, although much smaller. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of continuation in the way some of these flap anatomies are imaged.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, and yes, we do have to reiterate that the masturbation book is not a pop-up. If it were, I
No.
should have known. We should have known already. That would have been on my what time period is that from?
It would have been 1470.
Okay. We have a lot of incunables. I'm going to have to look into that. Anyway, but yeah, Katie, this is a really good question. How do these flaps affect the book's binding? Are there some pages that have been cut out to give them space?
Yeah, no, there's no pages cut out. These are all flaps that are inserted layer after layer, and then into one heavier page, so that the page is a little weighty. But really, it's so compressed. It's amazing that there's no stubs or anything like that. And I think, I'm actually it's interesting to see we have another hardbound copy, the 1619, right, Damien?
Mhm.
And maybe Damien can talk a little bit more about that one. I'm not as familiar with that one. But for this one, because we still have those sort of they're not limp covers, but they're paperboard covers. So everything is very soft, and there's no stubbing or anything. Those pages are just a little heavier.
Yeah, these are very large sheets. They're sort of folio size sheets, and it's almost like it's an extended broadside in the way that it's
Mhm.
formatted. So you
Yep.
don't usually get these bound with other things. They're almost on their own a lot of the time, and it's just the 3 sheets. But it does get pretty deep, and there's sort of a cutting. It's actually set up so that the flaps are under the surface in a way, because it's a part of some of it has been actually cut out of the main sheet, and then it gets sort of sandwiched back in there. So sometimes did you find any new parts, by the way, that you didn't know you had when you were conserving this? Because sometimes they fall to the bottom.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But I
Okay.
mean, again, it's surprising. No, and I don't think so, Suzanne, because I know Katerina did a really extensive job
No.
of like digging deep. So, not just saying that, but she did
Yeah,
dig deep.
I don't think there was anything necessarily new, but it was interesting because on the female anatomy, the modesty flap, which there are actually two,
Yes.
was glued down. So to keep anyone from
Yeah.
really getting into the anatomy there. And so once Katerina was able to open that up, we were able to find all of those loose pieces were in there and available to
That's
So it, so it
I might
actually
have
kept
saved it.
everything intact
Yeah, I
while
might
it
have
was
saved
doing
it.
it. That's real. That's kind of ironic.
Yeah,
But
that
okay.
is funny.
Yeah, let's see. Lots of questions about the modesty and vanity flaps. Someone, Bonnie Miller asks, are the flaps mostly by incision to the back of the page? I'm not entirely sure what that means, but
Yeah, I think for me, what I think the answer to that question is most of them are just glued flaps that are glued down on top of each other. There's only a few that have those little incisions, and those were the ones that had sort of the double flap, like the one I showed you. Um, so mostly they're just glued down on top of each other. Yep.
yeah. All right, let's see. Rick Yeager is asking, have you considered AR for the exhibit? Beautiful. Let's see. I think that was a question. Yeah. Also, can you make a can you make a book of these? I don't know. Coffee table. What's one? It's really coffee table. It's like more people need to have these. Yes, available.
If someone wants to publish it, I'd be happy to.
All right.
Damien and I'd be happy to work with you.
All right. So we're coming up on the end of the hour. So I want to move on to our final presenter,
Thank
who's
you.
going to give us an update on the Paris fairs. But if people want to stay a little bit longer, we can have more discussion after the fact. Nicholas, would you like to tell us what we shouldn't miss if we were in the area?
Good evening, everyone. I was actually going to talk a bit about the Paris Pop-Up Book Fair, the Salon du Livre Animé. That's exactly 1 week from now. And it's on the other side of the Atlantic, so I'm not sure everybody here could join, but it's basically, hold on a second, some pop-up things just came up. It's basically it was created in 2008 by Jacques Dess. I'm sure most pop-up book collectors know him. He's been the main instrument into the third pop-up book revival in France in 2000, around 2002, with his first pop-up books exhibit. And he decided in 2008 to showcase what a dozen French paper engineers and to present the novelties, new publications, and just mark the event. And we're already at our 15th installment of the Paris Pop-Up Book Fair. The Jacques Dess retired from the event. He's still an antiquarian bookseller in Paris, but he doesn't organize the event anymore. And since last year, I took over, and well, I'm doing what I can to make it live on. It's in wonderful. There's a website. I'm sure Marianne can post the link in chat. There's it's now in the one of Paris city halls, and it's in a wonderful mainly 18th century mansion at the time, particular house. It's wonderful. And this year there's actually almost a quarter of the participants that I saw that are taking part in this Zoom session. Marianne will be there, and I saw two of our Dutch friends also there. And thanks, Marianne. And it's basically this year we'll have I'm stuttering a bit. The formula stays the same. We have about 3/4 of the participants who are pop-up book creators, and that's publish books by regular publishers where you can find in any mostly in any bookshop. And about, what did I say, 3/4? Then the remaining quarter is artist books mainly, handmade or printed in really small numbers. And that's about it. It's the one specificity of this event is that it's just one afternoon. It's 4 hours. It's just 4 hours, but it's hundreds and hundreds of people coming, just pop-up book fans, pop-up book lovers, or nearby families who come in just those 4 hours. And as those who have attended to the event know, that it's sometimes really crazy. And that's about it, I think. It's next week. I know some people are coming from very far to come and meet us and see us. And it's next week, next Saturday, in the afternoon in Paris. And I don't know, I'm not sure if there's any question. You'd have to check the social networks and stuff, and but happy to reply if there's any question. Yeah.
You know, I didn't realize it was such a quick event. That's a lot of setup for
Yeah.
2 hours, but it's wonderful that you're doing it and the audience is really there for it. Yeah, looks like we put up some links for you. Yeah, but thank you so much for giving us a little insider information on this one. I hope we'll get more of our members out there this year, but in coming years as well. Let's see. Yeah, Keith Allen was going to give us a pop-uptober update, but he was under the weather, so he'll probably talk about that in February, our next Zoom show and tell. But just to return to the exhibiting of pop-ups theme to finish up, Ellen Rubin has alerted me that there are upcoming exhibitions that are going to be in Rome and Prague. Prague is Kubasta, of course, coming up in December. So you know, if you are going to be in Europe, you know, there's plenty of things happening there as well. But yeah, so thank you everyone for coming. And as I said, if you'd like to, I mean, it's quite late for you, Nicholas. But if you'd like to ask more questions, we can stick around for a little bit. We could even open it up to just you know, chatting. We're not that many of us. But yeah, but thank you again. Apologies for the link confusion. I think most of us managed to get on here eventually. So yeah, and thank you so much to our wonderful exhibition curators. I think we're really going to be looking forward to seeing what happens with the anatomy and those who can be in the Philadelphia area. When does the show close again, Dot?
December 13th.
Yeah,
So there's not quite a month
to go see it.
Yeah.
So lots of creative uses for any type of books for, you know, installation and really getting into it in new ways. So yeah, thank you all.